Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We are on episode 15 of Yona of the Dawn, To a New Land. The last 3 episodes were really good. I recorded them a little bit ahead of time because of the holiday season, and then I've taken a little bit of a break. I've taken like a week off from watching Yona, and so I'm ready to dive back in. But man, Blue, old Moonlight, Cena or Sheena, I'm sure I've recorded ahead, so I'm sure y'all will tell me down in the comments below. I'm going to call him Cena right now but I don't know, it says Cena, but then they pronounce it Sheena. I'm like, make up your mind, translations. So I'm probably going to go back and forth until I get confirmation for sure, so it may even be next episode before I get that. But I really, really loved his backstory, like with Oooh, with everything. Some of you pointed out that Oooh is a female squirrel, and that the author had to make a note of that. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense of why blue doesn't fit the squirrel either. And that Oooh means blue. I'm like, oh no, it's so... I love that Oooh means blue and I means love. It's like, it's just like, just a smidgen off. But their backstory was so sweet. And I love the Blue Dragon. I still can't believe that his voice actor voices Bakugo from My Hero Academia. What? Like, voices Bakugo, Nishinoya. There's a couple other characters that voice actor voices, and they're all like big, bombastic characters. So the fact that he's voicing this very soft-spoken character in Cena or Sheena, I'm like, interesting. So it has me curious what might be to come with his character. But I just... the backstory was so sweet, and my dog has a new squeaky toy from Christmas, so hopefully he doesn't squeak that too much. But it was just a really good set of episodes, like 3 in a row. Like 12, 13, and 14 were really, really good. And now we're on our way to find the green dragon. And I've been excited for the green dragon. Is probably, out of all of the dragons, the green one is the one I've been looking forward to the most. There's just something about his character design, something about that ED of him and Hawk back to back looking all brooding. He's been the one I've been looking forward to the most. And I'm like, okay, we'll just have to wait on him. And now he's the one coming next. And I'm like, okay, all right. But so far, it's so hard. I get what y'all say, that y'all are like, all the dragons are really great in their own right, and it's hard to pick favorites. I just want to love all of them because I love Kija and I love Cena Sheena just the same. So I'm like, it's just apples and oranges, right? I feel like it's going to be apples, oranges, and bananas and kiwis at this point, and it's fine. But I'm really excited to get into this. We're over halfway through the season. Crazy talk, right? I'm going to need to start catching up with the manga because I'm only 1 volume in, and I'm going to have to read the 8 volumes before I get into volume 9, which happens after this series, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But in any case, I'm really excited to get into this episode, y'all. I hope you all are too. But yeah, let's go find this green dragon. I'm sure it won't be easy because with these last 2 clans, it's been somewhat where the white dragon was easy to find because their clan was stationary and they were like, come on in, we won't let you leave, but we'll let you come in. It's like Hotel California. And this last clan was still a clan that was stationary somewhat. They moved around a little bit, but they were not welcoming of visitors. But it's still like, I feel like the 2 dragons we found first were obviously the easiest to find. So now I feel like it's going to be a little bit more complicated. We shall see. But in any case, we're going to start this episode here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. So... this episode did not go where I thought it was going to go. It actually was really focused on Soo-won, which is interesting. I like this show. How do they tackle the obstacle of we are searching for the dragons? In this case of searching for Kija, it was kind of just they used it as a character building moment between Yoon, Hawk, and Yona. And then we did like a little fun montage to go until we found Sheena. But now that they're like, the green dragon should be in this area, haha. And so they go through this village and everything, but I feel like the whole thing with Soo-won is just to give us time to kind of let them find the green dragon. So while they're looking for the green dragon, this stuff's going on with Soo-won. And we get established that they are near Saika and they are near Kudo and the Kwoka Kingdom. So they're actually nearing the capital. They'll run into Hiryu Castle, and they don't want to do that yet. We're not ready for the main boss, which is funny because in the manga, we're not even near the main boss at all. But, I like, though, that they're able to use both Kija and Sheena to verify, and then Kija has the clear spiritual awareness, and Sheena has the eyesight. So it's like, okay, we got a new ED and OP. Again, I was watching ahead, so I didn't know. Awesome. Great. I like the new OP and ED. I like them both. There's not a lot of lyrics with the new one either, which is great. It's fine. But I like both of them. They're great. It looks like there was like a pirate ship involved in this next OP. So I was like, okay, cool. We have pirates. I'm fine with it. Okay, sure. But yeah, I like that Kija is trying to teach Sheena all about the lore because Sheena has no clue about the dragon lore. So I like that as they're going on this journey, we get established that Kija is teaching Sheena about the dragon lore. I'm like, that's cool. So by the time we get to the green dragon, then Sheena will be up to speed. Nice little narrative thing to kind of demonstrate what's going on. They're on their quest. So we get established some things about King Il in this episode. We go to the village that's been abandoned by Il and by the kingdom. And I like that we get established a few kind of world building things. We get established that the Fire Tribe has a lot of land, a lot of money, and a lot of military prowess, but their lands are mostly infertile. So it's kind of, they're a little hard pressed for resources. It's establishing the Fire Tribe is dependent upon other tribes, which I like that. So it's establishing the Fire Tribe can't stand on their own. They want to be at the top of the food chain as far as the kingdom goes, but they can't do everything on their own because their land is not sustainable. That's really important to note. So I like that. I like the idea that it's establishing the Fire Tribe can't just go rogue and break off and be their own tribe because they don't have the resources to do so. They are dependent upon the rest of the kingdom. Gotcha. Makes sense, right? And I also like in this episode that we get the callback to Yoon understands what these people in this abandoned village are going to because he was from a similar village. Even though they're not in the Fire Tribe, they're basically establishing their villages like this all over the place and that there's abandoned villages everywhere. I'm like, okay. And that the king and the generals have abandoned them. And Yona hearing this, Yona is hearing for the first time just how bad things were while her father was in charge. And so I like that Yona and Hawk don't argue with what they hear. They don't argue with it because they're seeing firsthand just how bad it actually is. So she's not arguing with them and saying that they're wrong, but it's such a hard thing for Yona to come to grips with, the fact that she's realizing her father wasn't the kind and great person that she thought he was, right? That he was still kind, and we'll talk about Hawk's perspective, but that he wasn't an infallible, amazing person as a leader like she believed he was as an individual. So we get into that with this, and I like that Yoon doesn't want her to get sick, but I'm like, Yoon, you're getting right up next to that man with the food and water, so if you get sick, she's gonna get sick from you, so at this point it doesn't matter. But I like the fact that Yona is so kind-hearted and compassionate that she gets down on her hands and knees to give him the water and to support him. And he's like, no one's touched me in years. And she's like the first, of course, the princess is the first one to do so. And it seems very symbolic in that regard. I like that. I also like the meta thing of the Fire Tribe, of Yoon saying how the Fire Tribe man is like pouring more money to the military despite his people starving. And Key just like, what a fool. And I'm like, that's such a meta commentary, fourth wall breaking. But yeah. So she gives him the water, and then Yoon has the medicine and the apple to give them too. And obviously they can't spare much more than that because they're, 5 wanderers on their own. And they ask if they're from Saika, and Yoon reasonably responds with, no, we're just travelers. And they're like, oh, have you been to Kudo then? There's a new king that's been crowned. And this whole conversation is so interesting. He's wondering what the new king is like. And I like in this moment, he brings up, I wonder what the new king will be like. And he's bringing up Soo-won and bringing up King Il's death. And Hawk steps forward like he's going to comfort Yona in that moment. He's like, because he's like, is this going to trigger her? But our girl Yona has grown so much in this series that she looks back to Hawk like, nah, I got it. We're good. I can handle this. And I'm like, oh, girl, you've grown up so much. And she's like, yeah, I like that. Hawk's like, oh, okay, you're okay. Good, right? But then he says the previous King Il was a terrible king. And that gets her being like, and then he crumbled under pressure from other kingdoms, Sai and Shin, focusing only on not creating waves. The 5 clans were divided and the kingdom fell into chaos. Yep. He wouldn't even save the weak commoners like us. Whose king was he supposed to be? So yeah, I hope the new king is a good man. And him reaching towards the sun. I hope he changes this kingdom. Yeah. And then it says, and then of course he tells Yona, thank you, miss. You're the first person that's touched me in years. It's so ironic because he's like, I hope the new king is a good king. And he's looking right at the princess who wants to take over again. So that's interesting. And in that moment, it's like, okay, so King Il didn't want to cause any waves. He didn't want to cause any conflict. So he just backed away from any conflict whatsoever. So the 5 tribes were all at chaos with each other because the king, and you could probably argue the king didn't want to play favorites and support one tribe over the other. But in doing so, in not supporting one tribe, he didn't support any of them. So they were all just thrown into chaos. And the other kingdoms were putting pressure on him and probably viewed him as weak. And so they're like, oh, we can try to take over. And it was just, it was slowly crumbling under his rule. And I like that she's trying not to cry. And she's like, it's okay, just take care. And she's just trying not to cry about it. And they leave him the food and water and the medicine. Ah, man. And then, yeah, I like that she's like, I need to go use the bathroom, don't follow me. And she's like, just leave me alone. And she just goes around the corner so she can cry. And of course, Sheena is like, and it's good to know now that the squirrel is a girl. And so Sheena's like, you're a girl, go. Like, go check up on her. I love it. It's so cute. But yeah. And Yona's like, I couldn't say anything. Because he's like, I didn't think highly of the king either. Because yeah, Yoon didn't like royalty or nobles or anybody. He's like, I didn't think highly of the king, so I couldn't say anything. But he's like, I didn't disagree with the guy, right? And he's like, but to Yona, he was her only flesh and blood. So it's such a complicated situation because he's like, I didn't like King Il either, but that's Yona's only family, so I didn't want to talk ill of, didn't want to speak ill of the dead, but And so what do you do in that situation? And Kija makes the comment, it's likely that no one grieves for the late king. Yikes. No, it doesn't seem like anybody is sad that he's dead. He will go down in history as a foolish king. And that's what Hawk argues about, because Kija's like, he'll go down in history as a foolish king and no one cares about a single princess. So, which hint why even though they're in hiding, they're not being hard pressed to be found. Because like Kija said, he's like, nobody cared about King Il. So they're not really, and they view King Il as weak. So they're not really clamoring to find his daughter. Because as we've seen in this episode, family reputation has a thing in this. Has a stake in this, because like Guen-tea notes that he had viewed Soo-won like Ju-hong, so he was like, that's one of the reasons he supported him, and now he's like, I don't know what to think of this guy. Interesting indeed, right? Interesting indeed. And so I feel like the family reputation has a big stake in this, just like how Soo-won could use his father's reputation to gain favor in all of this. Yona, because her father had such ill reputation, pun intended, no one's really clamoring to find her because they probably think she's just weak like her dad. Like, she's not a threat, right? She's not threatening. So that helps explain why nobody's looking for her. But yeah, but then Hawk chimes in. He's like, you're right. He said, a world without weaponry and war where no one gets hurt is but a pipe dream. So yeah, he's like, it's foolish to think. He's like, it is foolish to think that we could live in a world without any conflict at all. He's like, that's not possible. He's like, it's pipe dream. There's no way. But Hawk's belief is that I could never think of the king as a fool for his unwavering belief that such a world was ideal. So he's like, yeah, he's like, the king was wrong thinking that there was no chance that the king was wrong for thinking there could be a world without conflict. Hawk is definitely understanding of that. But he's like, the king was unwavering in his belief. And then he would cut back to the part where he grabbed the sword to stop the conflict. And he's like, he hid his own wounds. Saying he hid his own wounds, and I didn't see him as a coward at all. He's like, I would never serve a fool. So Hawk's like, he's like, I can't view the king as foolish because that would make my line of work foolish. He's like, that would mean that everything I did to protect him and Yona was foolish. And Hawk doesn't believe that at all. It's really tragic because it seems it seems from the onset that he was so... I've talked about this in Attack on Titan, and if you've never watched Attack on Titan before, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I will make note. This is the shoujo version of Attack on Titan. It really kind of is, because a lot of the same ideals, a lot of the same, like, mythology elements, a lot of the same elements in this show are very similar to Attack on Titan. And there is a character in Attack on Titan, I won't say his name because I don't want to spoil it, but if you've never seen the show, go watch it. It's very different from this, but thematically it's similar in ways. But there's a character in that series that is very much a slave to this ideal of creating this paradise and this perfect world without conflict. And that's kind of what... That character is very similar to King Il in that they just wanted to create a world without any conflict that was an idealistic paradise. The problem is that's not possible. The problem is that that's not really possible. There is always going to be some form of conflict. The question is, how do you let it get out of hand, or how do you control that conflict? That's the thing. And when we get to Soo-won, we're going to talk about that, because I think Soo-won has a means he's trying to curb that. But Hawk's point is that he can't view King Il as a coward because he was clearly not weak in his eyes. He was fighting his own battle. The problem is that King Il was very much a slave to this ideal that he could create this idealistic world without conflict. And it ended up becoming his own undoing, because in trying to maintain no conflict, he just shoved everybody to the side and didn't help anybody in particular. And not helping anybody in particular didn't help the situation. It just made it worse. So his methods proved to be a failure, but Hawk's like, I don't view him as a failure of a person, because I wouldn't be the type of person to serve a fool. So it's interesting, right? And then, yeah, Hawk's like, I'll probably regret my inability to protect him at the castle. So Hawk's like, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be mad that I couldn't do more. And Yoon's like, well, you acknowledged King Il as your master regardless of the fact that he was Yona's father. And Hawk's like, yeah, I made that promise even before all this. And then we go back to Yona saying, I want you to remember my father and his daughter, like telling Hawk that to keep calling her, Hime-sama. And he's like, I could never forget. The princess, once the kingdom's most beautiful girl, is now alone. It's like Hawk's calling her the most beautiful girl in the world. It's like, she has nothing but herself. The only pride she has. And he's thinking this in the moment. He's not saying this out loud. So it's like Hawk views her as the most beautiful girl in the world. It's like, Yona! Can't you see? But Hawk doesn't say this next part. He says the only pride she has left is her connection to the father that she loves. So he's like, yeah, her father is her pride, and he's not going to let that get shamed. And then, of course, we see that Yona's been hearing the whole conversation. And trying not to cry. And then that little squirrel being adorable, and then her being like, snuggling this little squirrel. Freaking cute. Freaking precious. So precious. And then, yeah, so we've abandoned... So that was just like a little part of the story. And I like they set up a tent for Ao and Yoon and Yona. And so then Yona gets up in the middle of the night to do her archery practice as per usual. But it's she's so conflicted because she's like, I have to become stronger to help protect Hawk and the others and keep them from protecting me so that they don't get injured. But as she's doing this, she doesn't want to lose Hawk or anyone else close to her. But as she's doing that, she realizes that her father never wanted her to pick up a weapon. So it's like she wants to honor her father's memory, but at the same time, she wants to protect those in the present that she loves. And it's like those two goals are conflicting with one another. And it's so hard for her. I feel so bad for Yona. Because I'm like, her wanting to protect her father's memory and honor it, and then wanting to protect her friends. It's like, And then that straight cutaway to the Hawk. The Hawk that I believe represents Soo-won so perfectly. Chishin, the capital of the Earth Clan. Yeah, so the rest of this episode is about Soo-won visiting Guen-tea with judo. I like judo a lot, our 34-year-old bachelor. I love it. And Geun-tae clearly in his probably late 20s. So, because he's younger. Children. Yeah, I love that. I did not know Guen-tae was married. So he's married. Just lounging around, unashamed. As a general with the leopard print. I love it. just lounging around with his hairy legs and his scarred up body. Like, just not ashamed. No shame at all. I love it. And I like so this rest of this episode is so interesting because the Earth Clan, all the members clearly admire Guen-tea because of his prowess as a general and the fact that he's kept his people safe, right? And I like that his entire palace and everything, it's very pretty and decorated and everything, which I'm assuming has some connection to his wife because his wife likes flowers and growing teas. I hope we get to see her. I want to get to see the wife of Guen-tea. And then he talks about how he struck down like a fierce god during battle. And the banners for Koka are the red dragon. But Chol establishes that under King Il's reign, war was forbidden. Like they tried to establish a peace treaty. And I like that Chol also says, you call yourself fierce god, but you were defeated by the youngster known as the Thunder Beast. The youngster, meaning that back then when Hawk was young, he could still beat Guen-tea. And it's like, interesting. I feel like we're setting something up with that. Like, even if it's not in the anime, I feel like it's setting something up in the manga for Guen-tea and Hawk to have a rematch. I feel like that's going to happen, but I don't know. And he's like, all these people coming, he's like, what are you going to tell me to shave now? My wife likes my manliness. So Soo-won visits. And this is such a curious part of the episode because Soo-won, it's so interesting. And I'm sure that the manga and the rest of the series is going to touch on this. But I'm so fascinated because Soo-won in this episode Soo-won has set himself up in previous episodes to clearly know what King Il has been about. Like, he's been scouring documents, he's been researching, he's been seeing like how much King Il has kind of wrecked the kingdom over the years, this 18-year-old crown prince. And then there's still mysteries surrounding the death of King Il and the disappearances of Hawk and Yona, as Guen-tea notes with Soo-won, and he notes that he revered Yu Hong. So Guen-tea, of course, revered Yu Hong from his youth, and he thinks that Soo-won is nothing like him. But I'm like, I don't know. This is interesting, the way that he presents himself. Throughout the entire episode, I thought that what Soo-won was doing was fishing for information. Like, he says he's sightseeing, but I feel like he's evaluating all the different tribes and seeing how they all function and what their views are. He is doing his own research. He is going from tribe to tribe to do research, see like what their clans are like, see what the situation is, what their views of King Il were. He's basically evaluating, is Guen-tea going to be an ally to me or not? And he's doing it in a way where they tell him information instead of him asking them. So it's not suspicious at all, right? Because Guen-tea's offering him all kinds of information. He's talking about his wife, talking about, by the end of this conversation in this episode, he admits like that he liked Yu Hong, which I'm sure Soo-won is like mentally noting like, okay, this guy liked my father. He was loyal to my father. I can use him, right? And it's also established about the ore, the resources that are valuable, because they talk about the mine collapsing. And the reason the mine has been collapsing, and I can totally relate to this because my area is like a very big mining community, is that you only have so much that you can mine underground. And once you mine so much, you got to leave because you can keep mining, but then you need like pillars of underground support. And it sounds like what they've done is that they've taken all of the resources away, and now it's more prone to collapsing because there's no support under there. And there's moments in here where Soo-won has like the glare, like the green-eyed glare, but then he immediately goes back to that relaxed stance of like, everything's fine. And then, yeah, Guen-tea notes that he's not like Yu Hong, he's more like King Il. And then by the end of the episode, he's like, he's worse than King Il. And it's like, So my theory is, by the end of, because it seems like next episode is going to go into this whole war games thing, that my theory is that Soo-won is presenting himself to look a certain way so that when he proves himself to be the exact opposite, it's going to catch Guen-tea by surprise, and Guen-tea's going to be like, okay, I'm going to respect this guy. But I could be totally wrong. I feel like Soo-won is fishing for information in this episode, trying to feel out what the kingdom is like and how. So he's found out tons of things in this episode. He's found out that Guen-tea's loyal to his father. He's found out that the castle here is in need of renovations, but they have no money. They're running out of resources. He's establishing that the people of the entire clan admire Guen-tea and look up to him. So if he gets in Geun-tae's favor, he's going to get in the entire clan's favor. He knows that Guen-tea wants to go to war, that he's willing to fight for him as long as there's an enemy. He's learning all sorts of information about what's going on. And so it's interesting because it seems like Soo-won is just gathering up intel on all the tribes that he can use at a later time and figure out how can he move certain chess pieces around in his favor. It's actually genius. If it's really what I think it is, if what Soo-won is doing is what I think he's doing, it's genius because he's just playing everybody to gather information. And then Shaw almost lets something out in this episode. He's like, some of our own tribes' regions are unstable, such as Awa. And he starts to say Awa, and then he's like, no, watch your mouth. You're not speaking to me. You're speaking to a guest. And it's like, ha, ha, ha. So, yeah, Soo-won is trying to figure out all of the stuff that he can about the kingdoms so that he can make his own move and play the pieces on the chessboard around to their most advantageous angle. Because, yeah, I don't think what we've seen of Soo-won so far in this series, I don't think Soo-won is going to be at all like King Il. I think he's just gauging how each of these pieces are. And I love that when they show King Il in Geun-tae's flashback, it's just the back turned to him and it's all in shadow. It's so interesting. It's so interesting how all these perspectives these characters are, like how they view King Il and how they're viewing Soo-won. So Soo-won wants to have like a war games, like a mock battle, a mock tournament, just to like ease the people and create like some kind of festival with it. Because yeah, Geun-tae says he's like, if you're no different than King Il, then I'll start a rebellion. So yeah, this whole episode was just Soo-won gathering information. I talk about Moda Azushi. If you've not watched Moda Azushi, it's amazing too. But Soo-won reminds me of a character named Yao in that series a lot. Not entirely, they're not entirely identical, but there's things that Soo-won does that I'm like, that's like Yao. And in Moda Azushi, Yao was very much for the people. Like he was trying to make the kingdom better for the people, especially the common folk. And Soo-won seems very similar to Yao in that regard. Now, Geun-tae is questioning Soo-won's conviction, and is he really going to keep the promise that he said of making the kingdom better? And Soo-won's like, yep, I meant it. And Geun-tae's like, you're not anything like you were at the coronation. What is this? You have no ambition. What is going on? And I feel like Soo-won he's very two-faced. Right? He comes across very two-faced because what we've seen from him behind closed doors with this council is very different than how he's acting with Guen-tea. So I don't know how to read this situation, but I have a feeling in the next episode, Soo-won is going to do something that is going to make Guen-tea like him. He's going to do something that is going to make Guen-tea realize that no, he's like Yu Hong, or like, no, he's not like King Il at all. And so he's going to be following Soo-won after the next episode. I feel like it just depends on how he does it. How does he make it work? That's the question. But yeah, I feel like Guen-tea he's questioning him right now, and he doesn't think that he's, worthy of any of his respect. And I feel like by the end of next episode, however he's going to do it, that's the curious thing. He's going to earn that respect. Because right now he abandoned him. He left him with Chul and Judo, and didn't even want to spend the time of day with him. And Soo-won doesn't seem bothered by it at all. Soo-won's like, this is all part of my plan. You're going to question me, but I'm going to make you follow me in the end. It's kind of like Oikawa from Haikyuu, right? Oikawa's like, you will follow me whether you like it or not. It's like, ah! So, very curious. I'm so curious to see what all we end up doing next episode with Soo-won and Guen-tea. And then I'm assuming that's just going to pass the time until we get back to Yona and the others as they find the green dragon. So yeah, this was a really good episode, but I'm so intrigued by Soo-won. And I'm sure down in the comments we'll have a lot to talk about in terms of his motivation. Don't spoil me, obviously. I'm sure next episode there's going to be a part 2 to this, that's going to advance on that. But as of right now, Guen-tea thinks that Soo-won is worse than King Il. Like, he has no ambition and he's even worse. And I'm like, probably going to eat your words next episode, but I could be wrong. So I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below about this episode. I really liked this episode a lot. And I'm very curious. I'm glad we get some Soo-won focus because it's been a while since we've had any focus with Soo-won. He's such an interesting antagonist. I can't hate him. I can't. I'm frustrated by him because I get why he says, this reminds me of the people I love. He loves Hawk and Yona, but in his quest to become king and change the kingdom around, he has to distance himself from Hawk and Yona because they were so loyal to King Il. And it's like, you get it. You get why he's doing it. It's just so frustrating because you're like, no, why can't you all? It's like you want them to all be together and for things to be like they were, and they just can't be right now. And it's very frustrating. So yeah, I'm curious to see what happens next episode. I hope y'all are too. But yeah, let me know below down what your thoughts are. Please no spoilers, but I'm excited for episode 16. Very much so. So in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Yona of the Dawn. Bye.